And good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Dutch Mentor. Hi, I'm Walter, and I'm joined today with Michael Adkins from all the way in Houston, Texas, I believe. We had a really nice conversation not too long ago about FACI preparations and leadership, and I thought it would be a great idea to come for him to come back today and visit the show and to share his journey into leadership, where he came from, where he is today, and you'll hear from his accent that he's not from New York. And hopefully one or two of you will take something away. So, Michael, without any further delays, why don't you kickstart and tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about your journey. And thank you again for coming to the show today.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. So I'm Michael Adkins. I'm CEO of Emergency Hospital Systems. We're outside of Houston. We really focus on some of the rural communities that are underserved with some micro hospitals to make sure that people can get care in the communities that they live in. So, to tell you a little bit about my career, I grew up in West Virginia. That's where you get the accent from. It is definitely a very interesting place to learn about healthcare and to get your education in healthcare because, the tenets of healthcare really change based on the populations that you serve. And growing up in a state that is severely under-resourced and underfunded for healthcare, you do a lot of your clinicals and stuff, getting out into the communities and providing care for those people who there is a huge disparity in the care that they get. So it was a good educational journey to get my education where you had to be creative, had to improvise, and a lot of times you had to go to the patients rather than the patients coming to you. So it was a great learning experience. But my first degree, my bachelor's degree, is in nursing. So I started out my career as an ER nurse, and again ended up moved to Charlotte. Didn't work in Charlotte. Drove 30 minutes outside to a rural community there and worked in their ER. And really learned a lot because again, you have to be you really have to be considering all of the factors of the community, and you have to improvise and work with the resources you have. So you learn to do things in a way that is the best for the patients in the absence of all the resources. And so I worked in that ER for a couple years. I was young at the time, and that was the first big boom in the early 2000s for travel nursing to take off. And I thought, well, what a great way to get experience, to travel around the different hospitals, see what they do well, see what they don't do well, and then I've always felt that there is no bad jobs. Now, there might be jobs that we don't like, but even in those jobs, there's always something that you put away into your experience that you're going to be able to apply on down the road elsewhere. Or you become a resource for the facility that you're currently at because you saw something that was done very well at another organization, and you're able to bring that in because healthcare is a collaboration of ideas. No one place has all the right answers. And so we really need to draw from the shared experiences of the people within the hospital or within the healthcare system to come up with the best plan to deliver our services. And so I was a travel nurse for many years. And I'd flip back and forth between the ER and the surgical ICUs. Anything that, kind of had action and I was able to get my hands dirty. I loved post-op surgeries and wounds and all of that. But one of the things I really started noticing was, especially in that first big, uprising of travel nursing because of the nursing shortages, was that not all patients got the level of care that my patients got. You have to be empathetic and giving in the healthcare profession. It's okay to want to get a salary and want to make money at it. None of us are volunteering here, so there is that expectation, but at the same time, you can't lose the empathy and the caring. That's what brought us into the healthcare profession to begin with. And what I really started seeing was that, my patients got excellent care. Other patients, they got their tasks completed, but I wouldn't quite say that they got care. And, I really looked at this and thought, well, the best way I can influence this is to move into a leadership position. And at that time, I'd really never considered going back to school and furthering and getting another degree. But I started looking, and most of the requirements for even moving up in nursing leadership was that they were starting to move toward masters weren't required, but they were recommended. And so, I enrolled myself in a master's program, found another rural hospital outside of Charlotte that was looking for someone to come in and revamp their med-surg units and be the nursing director there to kind of bring in a new model of care, which it's called Lean Tree. It's kind of a holistic approach to nursing and patient care where, you bake cookies on the unit. You make sure that there's face-to-face time. This was the beginnings of the Studer movement with patient rounding and making sure that the patient was really the focal point and that there was a compassionate side to the care we deliver, not just a technical side. And so, I took that job, really focused on patient satisfaction, focused on educating nurses to this new model of, focusing on what the patient felt versus what was wrong with the patient. And, came through that and worked that job for a couple years, and things in my life made me want to move and change locations. And so I came to Houston and started working for a hospital that tenant owned, and got in that hospital, and very similar thing. The economy had changed at this hospital. The types of patients they were receiving was becoming different. It was starting to lean more from a commercially insured population to more of a self-pay Medicare and Medicaid population. So a lot of chronic illnesses, a lot of things. And, they were looking to redo their nursing program there. And, I was fortunate, God put me in the right place at the right time. I came in with fresh ideas. They listened to my ideas. We realigned the nursing units in the way that we gave care. I just kind of started acquiring nursing units under my being a director. And, tenant saw a little something in me, and they said, well, what do you want your next step to be? You want to be a CNO? Do you want to be a COO? Where do you see it going? And unlike most nurses, one of the things I really liked was I liked the business aspect of it. How do we marry good business practices with good patient care? A lot of people, don't think you can talk about business and that you can talk about patient care in the same breath, especially back in, 2008, 2010. You really didn't see a lot of intermingling of business and patient care. But what became very evident is you can't have one without the other. The statement's always been said, you can't have a mission without a margin. And it was, becoming more evident to the point to where we are today. We continue to see shrinking reimbursements and higher care expectations and costs. So at some point you have to marry the two. And so when I was posed with that question, I really enjoyed the business side. I enjoyed sitting down and working out budgets and contracts and figuring out how many FTEs per patient day I could do. And so they put me on the track to become a COO, sent me through their leadership program there. And, ended up coming out of that leadership program. They put me in as the COO of the hospital I was at, which was one of the largest hospitals that they had within Tenet. And, it was a great experience, learned a lot. Again, I started getting presented situations that, hey, I remember back when I was at this underfunded rural hospital, this is how they accomplished making sure something was done. And you wouldn't typically think about bringing that into a huge city hospital, but situations started aligning to where you're seeing the same type of patients, you're seeing the same lack of funding. And so, being able to marry those two things together and draw on those past experiences. And then the other thing I really love doing is, I like teaching people. I want to always be in an organization where it doesn't matter if I come in that day or not, things are going to continue on the way that they're supposed to. And so really focused on having leaders that reported to me who understood what the goal was, understood how to do problem solving, move things around, and make sure patients were taken care of. And then when I became the COO, one of the things that people ask you, what's your proudest moment? Everywhere I've ever worked, you had nursing and then you had everybody else in the hospital. And one of the things that's kind of my proudest accomplishment was after I became the COO, we started having joint meetings. I'd have nursing meet with the laboratory director. And, the laboratory director may not have understood, well, why is it a big deal if my phlebotomist calls in for the day? A nurse knows how to draw labs, just give it to nursing. And, I can still remember a conversation with my laboratory director where he said, hey, the phlebotomist called in this morning, and so nursing's going to have to draw their own labs. And I said, well, Mr. Laboratory Director, remember how last week you were telling me you needed raises for the people in your lab? That nursing was getting raises, so they should get raises. I said, what kind of image does it present if when you can't provide a service, you just lay it off on nursing? That tells nursing they're more important. He said, you're right. So instead of sending out the email that said, phlebotomists aren't going to be here in the morning, you're going to have to draw labs, he came in that morning and drew the labs for the hospital. And after that, I really started seeing, they didn't even come to me. If nursing had an issue with lab, they went to the lab director. If there was an issue between radiology and nursing, the radiology director went to the nursing director. So, really getting everybody educated and getting them on the same page and empowering them to solve their own issues.
Yeah.
Was what enabled us to move through these transitions. And so, as I've continued learning, I knew I had no desire to go back and get my doctorate. But at the same time, I think you always need to be educating yourself as well as helping educate other people. I had kind of been a passive member of the College of Healthcare Executive for years, but never really focused on trying to achieve my fellowship status. And so I really got into a place towards the end of last year that, I felt myself stagnating a little bit as it pertained to getting new information and educating and building up, the resources I could offer to the organization. And, knew I didn't want to go back and get my doctorate. And so I was like, hey, I've got this awesome thing sitting here right in front of me that is a fellowship. To me, the whole point of the American College of Healthcare Executives is to have continuous learning, to have continuous sharing, to make sure that not only are we improving healthcare for those that we serve, but also that we're improving the profession of healthcare. Um, and so it really aligns with what my beliefs on leadership were. So it just made sense to, really focus on becoming a fellow. And so I'm happy to say that, yesterday I actually registered to take my fellowship exam. And, hopefully within the next couple months, I'm going to go to a couple workshops and do some education to make sure that I only have to take the test once. But it aligns and it furthers that mission of improving the profession as a way to improve the healthcare that we provide for people.
Yeah. Thank you
That's
for.
my long-winded answer.
But that's okay. You certainly have told your story a few times, and it's pretty cohesive. So one of the things I just wanted to, for the audience is that, again, it is evident. In my book I write about how many transitions do most professionals go through, 6 to 7, right? And if you count up the number of transitions you have made, is about right. Making that big decision to go from clinical side to administrative side, a lot of people struggle with that. So thank you for outlining on how you made that decision and the impact you wanted to have. And I 100% agree that, and I experienced that, as a service line executive, when you have nursing, physicians, and administrators all reporting to you, but they're still working in parallel rather than in synchrony. And it is not until you bring them together for that common goal, common purpose around a common why, and that they're incentivized around the same subject, which should be the patient, that we can make real change. It's interesting, I had a conversation with the CEO of a large academic facility yesterday about the forever struggle around throughput. And again, we cannot fix throughput as long as it's a nursing thing and a doctor thing and an administrative thing. It's the only way to fix it if it just becomes our focus. So on the note, and congratulations, by the way, for taking the action step of registering and for your exam, because a lot of people get right up to that moment in time and then they don't follow through and actually take the test, and often because they don't feel prepared or they have fear of failure, because it is a tough exam. Just elaborate for me a little bit more on when you became the senior director and then became the CEO of the hospital, how you brought the people together. What was your magical touch to get the doctors, the nurses, and the administrators to think about, together as one? And do you have a specific metric that you can mention on something you accomplished that allowed them together to shine rather than working against each other? Of course, I'm putting you on the spot now, right?
Well, but no, I'm trying to figure out how to word this because honestly, the initial way that I did it was really highlighted by that story. For lack of a better way of saying it, I kind of played on their vanities. There's always been a feeling in hospitals that there's a caste system, and obviously doctors sit at the top of the caste system, but right below them is nurses. And then, your radiology techs, your respiratory therapists, your lab people, they always felt like they were second-class citizens. And so part of it was changing their mentality, and you have to change it on both sides. And so it was a lot of looking at, okay, if you don't want to be the second class citizen, then don't put yourself in that situation. I highlighted that with the lab director. He thought, this is a duty that lab performs, but since it's difficult for me, or it's going to be uncomfortable for me personally to perform this, I'm just going to hand it off to nursing. Well, I talked to him and I said, you're just telling nursing that they're better than you. I said, so don't tell them that, because nursing can't draw blood like a trained phlebotomist can. It hurts the patient more. Patients don't like it when nurses draw blood. They prefer that phlebotomist that they don't even know. I said, so, there's things you're experts at. Hold on to those and do them well and take ownership of it. And I think a lot of it comes down to convincing people and showing them how they can be an owner of something versus a renter.
Yeah.
I always like that analogy. There's a lot of things people can do. They can do the task, but they can't perform it in a way that it's either efficient or it's the most compassionate. And you've got subject matter experts. And so rather than, uh, rather than deny that you're a subject matter expert, or rather than to devalue that, value that, hold it out. And so we did a lot of projects. We did. I'll give you another one. We had a big struggle with contamination rates on blood cultures, and so we did a study. You have a nurse who has 4 years of education plus this experience. What is their contamination rate on drawing blood cultures versus a phlebotomist who probably just has a certificate that they got after 6 months? And we made all of our numbers public. We shared it. We didn't put names, but we had titles. And so we showed that the infection rate from a phlebotomist drawing blood cultures was 0, and nursing was running at about 15%. So it got to the point the nurses were like, well, we don't want to do something we're not good at. The phlebotomist is really good at. So the nurses started to value the phlebotomist, and the phlebotomist started taking pride in what they were experts at. And so you get them working together on a project like that. And it's not to show anyone's bad. It's to show that people have their area of expertise. And when you work together and you marry your expertise with their expertise, the whole point here was making sure we got antibiotics to a patient within an hour. Nurses had to engage with those phlebotomists to, hey, get over here, get my blood drawn for me because I'm no good at it. And that way I can accomplish my goal of getting my antibiotics up in an hour. So it
Right people, right roles, right? It is critical.
Yeah, so it was little collaborations. There wasn't one big grand collaboration. It was just really taking every opportunity to show everyone that they had value, and show other people what that value was. I've done this at an organization before where we had nurses go in and clean up after a patient. We had EBS go in and clean up after a patient. Then we swabbed the room. The room was just full of contamination when a nurse did it. The room was spotless when EBS did it. And so really got people to understand, value your EBS, feed them so that they're there and getting rooms turned out. We were talking about throughput, value your EBS, show them how important they are to throughput, of getting rooms ready, getting rooms clean, and engage them and show them that they're valuable, make them part of the solution. And it's going to carry everybody else along, because there's something that a nurse with a 4-year degree does not want to be the trip in the path of a turnover journey when she's seeing somebody that's an EBS person that's got a high school diploma is getting gold stars in the turnover process. So it's a little bit of friendly competition, and they're playing on a little bit of vanities, but really just showing everybody what their role is, defining those roles, and that every role is equally important.
Yeah, it is. It's flattening the hierarchy. That there's no, the neurosurgeon is no more important than the EVS, who keeps the OR clean. And it is, and that philosophy holds true. I always laugh is that if you want to fix throughput, tell everybody in leadership, doctors, nurses, and administrators, bring their mother to work for a day. Put them all in the emergency department, let them lay on an emergency department stretcher for 8 hours after they are ready to move up. And I am sure by the time these mothers get home and tell their sons and daughters of their horrible experience, things can be fixed. Again, it comes down to it, right? We need to learn to look at it from the point of view of somebody else's prism, and that takes time, right? And it's part of the culture you're trying to build. So, Michael, thank you very much for sharing your journey today. It certainly is very interesting, and it really speaks again to the fact that we have to take some left and right hand turns in our journey. We should not be afraid of making a transition from clinical to administrative. But the goal is to always to keep the patient at the focus of all the things that we do. It is about bringing people together, about having, heightening our self-awareness and our self-development. If others are not giving it to you, have to pursue that. And of course, the outcome of that speaks to having a good career like you are having today. So thank you again for doing our chat about leadership. Any parting words for your listeners?
I thank you for having me. And I just wanted to add to that. I think an important part of the journey too is bring others along with you.
Yeah.
It's not about just you developing yourself. I think to truly develop yourself fully, you have to make sure you're developing others. And so bring others along on your journey with you. They may not be at the same point, but they're on a journey. So help
Yep.
them get to their next step as you're getting to yours.
Yeah, pay it forward. Your FACI credential, will mandate, so to speak, right? It's one of the driving of the mission to pay it forward and to help others. And like I said, nobody makes it to the Olympic without a good coach and mentor. As you are coach and mentor, don't forget the people coming after you, and that you're well set on that end. So thank you again for joining us today, and I look forward to staying in touch, and we'll talk real soon again.
All right. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.